From iAfrikan Media, this is iAfrikan BYTES, a podcast that features commentary on African news, insights, opinions, and analysis with tech industry leaders and professionals. The podcasts are from interviews conducted by the iAfrikan team, whether at events or when needed for commentary. I'm Bataon Kosokwane, host and editor-in-chief for iAfrikan.com, spelled www.iafrikan.com. Dr. Daniela, welcome to iAfrikan.com.
Thank you very much.
We're live from Deep Learning Indaba at the University of Ghana in Accra. I think we're day 3 now.
Yes,
4,
although it feels much longer.
It feels much longer, right? I thought I was only one. But in the 3 days you've been now, how's Ghana for you?
Oh, fantastic. It's my first time
It's your first time in Ghana?
First time in basically West Africa.
West Africa,
so
same
it's, it's been a great trip. I flew in from Sydney, so it's been quite a bit of jet lag to get over.
How many hours?
But the flight itself was over 20 hours, so very long.
Wow,
Yes.
20 hours?
Yes.
Did you connect anywhere?
Yes, Dubai.
Okay, Dubai, okay, wow.
Yes. But first time in Accra, first time in West Africa. It's been fantastic.
Yes.
And of course, what better reason to come here than for the Deep Learning Indaba?
100%.
I've been involved in the organization for a number of years now, since the second one actually.
Okay. So the one in Stellenbosch?
Exactly, that was the first one I organized. In fact, the reason why I got into it was because I saw it somehow popped up in my emails that just after the first one, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I'm South African, I'm in machine learning, and there's a machine learning research conference based in Africa, getting Africans together. Like I have to email to see who's involved here, and I did. And the person who responded to me was Ulrich.
Yes.
He said, yes, sure, get involved. And so since then, I've been involved in the organization, including in parts this year. So.
Isn't Dr. Ulrich the coolest?
Yes.
We had him yesterday, and he was doing a whole video on the difference between machine learning and AI. And he just used props. On the spot, I'm like, dog, we should start a TV show.
He's fantastic. He does everything from the very high level strategic thinking for the deep learning Indaba all the way down to paying the people who need to be paid for printing the posters for today's attendees. So he operates at all levels.
You've been there since Stellenbosch. Walk us through your relationship with the other trustees, the co-founders, some of the attendants, and just the mentors. Walk us through the journey.
Yeah, it's been just such a growth in the community. I think in the first year that I was involved, we had just over 1,000 applications, I think, come in. And I think at that year we could host maybe 300 or 400 students in Stellenbosch. But to see now just how the community and the scale of that community has grown since then is just fantastic. And I think alongside that growth, there's been just a growing sense of friendship around, all the people that we are working with together to kind of pull this event off. Those friendships have just grown over the past 5 years. And so each year it's an opportunity to come together and see everybody again. Yes. We spend a year kind of talking on video calls, organizing all the logistics. And so the week is almost an opportunity to come together and just hang out as friends after a year of hard work in organizing it. So
it's amazing hanging out with like-minded minds and colleagues and
totally.
Just reminiscing and sharing really a passion that you love.
Totally.
Doc, let's start from the beginning. How does a Joburg girl go into AI? Why AI? This is you after matric. Why computers? Why all this?
Yeah, good question. I was always interested in computers. I did IT in high school, as an elective.
By the way, what high school did you go?
I went to school in Edenvale.
Edenvale.
Holy Rosary School in Johannesburg. Okay. And I was I was coding since sort of 13 or 14, and I just loved it. You sort of have this opportunity to get a computer to do what you wanted to do. So that always fascinated me. And then I went to do electrical and computer engineering at UCT after I matriculated. But I was always kind of intrigued. I preferred more the computer science side of the degree rather than the electrical engineering side. Again, I always really liked the coding aspect. But ticking away at the back of my mind was always this interest in how does the brain work? Why
the human brain that is.
The human brain that is, yes. And in particular, I was particularly interested in sight, vision. How do we see? Why how do we see the world? How does the brain interpret, these light signals that are coming into our eyeballs,
100%.
into the images that we see in our eyes or in the world? And so that sort of prompted me. Once I had finished my undergrad, I thought it would be cool to learn a bit more about the brain in a formal way. And so I applied for a master's in neuroscience at the University of Oxford, and I went over then to the UK to do that degree. And then I was there when I arrived. Well, when I was there, I realized that I just didn't want to leave. The environment was so inspiring. The buildings are beautiful. Lots of interesting students and life stories that come together in that student town. And so I was very interested to continue some of that research. But I couldn't sort of shake I couldn't shake this feeling that I wanted to kind of build useful things for the world. I didn't just want to be in academia and doing some very theoretical or piece of any research that was very detached from real world impact. And so I decided at that point to leave neuroscience research and kind of head back into engineering, where I felt that there was more practical applications for the research. But I still was continuing to be interested in vision, and so I did my PhD in computer vision, which is basically how do we build computer algorithms that know how to understand and see the world like we do.
100%.
And so my PhD was very focused on computer vision algorithms to help people who are blind. So thinking about assistive technologies that can help users who are blind or low vision to understand things around the world, recognize objects, recognize people. That was my PhD topic. And then after PhD, I joined Microsoft as an AI researcher, where I continue to do some of the work around building technologies for people who are blind.
Now, Doc, let's go into some of the practicalities. When you mean computer vision, computers looking at the world like we humans look at the world, what does that mean for blind people? Does it mean, a blind person can't see, right? Would that mean sort of like a computer device attached or some sort of that attached to the brain and then now sight is restored? What do you mean? Yeah,
good question. I was initially interested very much in that space, this idea of retinal implants. That's kind of the word for them, and the idea is that it's some chip that would be embedded into the brain, and it would help the person to see. But my research has transitioned or moved much more in the direction of assistive apps that can help users. So, we all carry a smartphone around in our pocket. These have fantastic cameras on them, and we can do a lot of good stuff 100%. On those camera images. So there are many now apps that are available which allow you to kind of scan the camera around an environment, and it sort of tells you what's going on in that environment, 100%. What objects are there, what people are there, how far away are the people, what emotions do these people have on their face, how old are they. And so Microsoft has an app in the space which they make available for free to users who are blind all over the world. And so part of our team's research helps that team kind of build this app.
Now, Doc, on applications, how does few-shot learning, give me an example of how few-shot learning can sort of revolutionize, AI applications in exactly what you're talking about?
Good question. So now we're going into the technicals. So few-shot learning is all about how do we build a machine learning model that can learn something new from a very small number of training examples. So whenever someone thinks about deep learning or AI in general, they probably always will associate this word big data to that. You need a lot of training data.
Massive amount of data.
Exactly. And that's great when you're in an environment where there is lots of data available about
what happens when there's not a lot of data?
Exactly. And there are many, many applications, in particular in African scenarios where you just don't have a lot of data. And so few-shot learning is basically how do we build a machine learning model that can learn a new concept but from a very small or a very few number of shots or examples. So rather than, for example, needing 1,000 training images of a dog, if you want your computer vision model to learn how to recognize a dog, can you just give it 5 training examples of a dog and it'll learn how to recognize that dog? So I'm particularly interested in this space of few-shot learning and in general building machine learning models and computer vision models that can learn from few examples, because I think it's a much more adaptable paradigm.
Okay.
So you can deploy these models. If a model knows how to learn from few examples, then you can adapt it to much more scenarios, much more applications, because it has this ability to kind of learn very quickly new things, rather than you having to go out, collect a whole big training data set, labeling that big training data set, training your model, and then redeploying it.
But now, Doc, as you're talking, I'm thinking, but then I could also put it to you, what about reliability? And, because there's also a lot of, biasness in algorithms, and how do you then, from the, this few shot data, which is not a lot, which is much more niche, how do you still have the sense of reliability?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's also one of the biggest challenges, because ultimately you want your model to be robust, in the sense that once you've taught it something, it should be able to, let's say you've taught your model to recognize a dog in an image, you want it to be able to recognize the dog in many scenarios,
100%.
whether it's dark, whether it's light, whether it's indoors, whether it's outdoors. And so that robustness of the model is really important. Is it going to work in all these different scenarios? So that's actually a huge strand, or a huge part of building a good few-shot model, is how a few-shot machine learning model, how well is it going to work in all of these different scenarios, all of these situations where the data that it sees in the real world may be different from these few training examples that it has. So yeah, there's still active research going on in this space to make sure that is the case.
Amazing. Doc, so I went through the whole experience of deep learning in Indaba, right? From, the application process, from, submitting our visa applitions and indemnity forms. And I must say, the system that we used was very actually intuitive and very easy to understand. You input, and then you had a constant, feedback and updates. And I was told that you created the Baobab system for the conference.
That's a very generous statement. I was part of a team that helped to build the system.
Okay, walk me through it. How did you, why did you create the system? And how do you create a system like that?
Yeah, so
is it a ticketing system? I don't know. What is it officially called? An event system, ticketing system?
I would probably call it like an online applications or events portal. And it basically helps us with our applications, reviewing the applications, our registrations, payments, as you say, visas for the deep learning Indaba events. And Baobab started, I think, around 2018. So in the first year of the Indaba, I wasn't involved yet. We received 1,000 applications to attend. And Ulrich, who we spoke about before, basically went through all 1,000. We captured them in a spreadsheet.
On an Excel spreadsheet.
Reviewing these 1,000 applications. And you can imagine that for one person to go through 1,000 applications is difficult. There's a lot of work.
No, definitely.
And also, we had very specific, as an Indaba organization, we had very specific ideas about how we wanted to review the applications. Diversity across Africa is very important to us. Gender diversity is very important to us. Gender equality is very important to us in the attendees. We also wanted to make sure that the people who attended the Indaba were really passionate about kind of growing African machine learning, and we're really aligned with that mission. And so we had very specific ideas around how we wanted to review people's applications. And so that in itself led us to this realization that if we want to scale the Indaba, if we want to get more people, and we want to make sure that we are reviewing all these applications that are coming in a way that aligns with our mission, we would need some system to help us do that, because all of the existing event portals that are available for other conferences kind of just weren't flexible enough for what we needed.
For what deep learning needed.
Exactly, and so that then led us to Avishka, who's the program chair for this year's Indaba, him and 2 other software developers who volunteered their time, really, Kaliab and Jade. And they essentially helped build the very first instantiation of Baobab. And it's since been so fundamental to the way in which we've been able to 100%. Scale the Indaba over the years. This year we received, I think it's 2,400 applications. So the scale is really growing, and Baobab has been just so central to us as an organizing committee to manage all of those in a fair and consistent way.
And what was your involvement with it? I mean, were you back end or just the strategy behind the platform? What aspect did you touch on?
Yeah, so I was involved in the very early beginnings where we realized that we needed this system. In fact, we were joking in the Stellenbosch Indaba, we had a spreadsheet containing all of the attendees, which we colloquially or sort of informally referred to as one list, because we sort of had all these different lists and we had to bring them all together and keep one list consistent. So this sort of one list was the motivation for needing to move to a system. And so I was sort of brainstorming in the very early days with Avishka. Avishka was really, really keen to get this off the ground. And we were brainstorming some names for what we would call it. And so I was involved in kind of the naming.
I mean, what inspired Baobab? Because that's a tree in South Africa, right?
It is. I think it's an African tree.
Yeah, it's an African tree.
It's, we called it that because it's the meeting point for all of the Indaba.
Nice point.
All of the Indaba attendees, And I think, a baobab.
Baobab.
Exactly. It's in our logo. And it was always seen as, the meeting point for when you would have an Indaba or a gathering. You would come to the baobab tree, and so that was the thinking behind the name.
Amazing. It's so cool when attendees and people at the conference actually practicalize their theoretical and acumen to build something that is very practical. I mean, it's amazing.
Yes, exactly. So that was kind of the starting point for Baobab, Jade, Kalieb, and Avishka, along with a whole community of other volunteer contributors, code contributors, Amrit, tons of people. I think Avishka said up to 50 people have helped over the years in open source, in code contributions to this open source repository. And I came in to the Baobab committee this year because I'm based in Australia, so time zone makes it really difficult for me to join synchronous meetings. But of course, contributing to code can be done at any time, and so it was a very natural alignment for me to join the Baobab committee. And I helped build out some of the functionality we used for this year. We have the basic functionality there now, but each year we're now improving, adding new features, robustifying existing features, and so I was part of that work this year.
Outside of the deep learning in Indaba, is there adoption in other events, like other countries, other things, meeting points that people are using the platform for?
Yes, definitely. So Baobab is a very flexible applications and events portal, and it's been used by several other machine learning communities in different ways. So Kipu is sort of the South American version of the deep learning Indaba, and they've used Baobab for their applications, for their events. We've also used it, it's also been used by the Eastern European machine learning community. They ran some events through Baobab. AI for development has used it for various applications. AIM South Africa has used it for their applications. It's a very flexible paradigm that I think has been adopted by many in the community who are needing such software, so it's great.
Dr. Daniela, I was told you're a global citizen. You're in Sydney. Where do you stay? Where do you live? How do we find you?
I'm based in Sydney, but only newly so, actually. I grew up in Joburg.
Okay, Joburg.
My whole sort of young childhood
Then went to Oxford?
Then went to UCT,
UCT,
so undergrad. Then moved over to the UK for the postgraduate studies, and I was there for 8 years. Got sick of the weather.
It's cold.
Decided that's it. I need more sunshine in my life. But it turns out that I obviously thought I can come back to South Africa. South Africa is a warm country. My family's there. But in the process of being in the UK, I ended up meeting an Australian guy.
There's always a guy in the picture.
And so last August we moved over to. We were both very sick of the weather, and so we thought, okay, now's the time to make a move. And we ended up moving to Sydney for some job opportunities there.
Doc, final question. In terms of the AI community and researchers and scholars, there seems to be a lot of them based in the UK. I mean, yesterday as we were driving to the Google, fireside chat, I was speaking to some of them, and a lot of them are in institutions, higher learning institutions, doing their PhDs in England and a bunch of other places. How do we retain that sort of intelligentsia in Africa? I mean, I'd like to get your insights on that. Is it a curriculum thing? Is it an investment in making our universities more attractable to PhDs and institutions to come set up those things? What needs to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think many of those things need to happen, but we're seeing slowly the starts of that movement, seeing the starts of those changes already, I think. So at the moment, or let's go back maybe 5 years, if a young student was really interested in AI, maybe they followed some people on social media or Twitter that were doing machine learning, and they really wanted to do machine learning, there was no one in their university who could really guide them or help them do a research project. Let's say they wanted to maybe continue into a master's or a PhD in this area. There was no one really that could provide that academic guidance to help them through that research. And so I think that very much prompts them to look elsewhere. Where else can I go to kind of receive this academic guidance? But that's not always going to be the case. Initiatives like the Indaba are here to build this local skill. And you can see in the Indaba attendees, it's not just undergraduate students, but faculty and postdocs and other researchers at more senior, African researchers at more senior levels who are also here attending, kind of building up this skill set, this knowledge of what it means to be in AI research. And so I think with time, we will slowly start to see that there will be this growth in the capacity, and we are already seeing this growth in the AI research capacity of the African continent. And I think that is going to then be at some point we're going to be at a point, and we're already seeing this, where a student, let's say, who wants to get into machine learning doesn't have to look abroad to go and take on, to continue that research journey. They can do it here locally in Africa. And so I really hope that we continue to see more of that growth. Indaba continues to facilitate more of that growth, and so there'll be less of a need to go search elsewhere for the work that you're really passionate about doing, and you can instead just do it at home.
How's the Ghanaian jollof?
I like it, but I haven't tasted Nigerian jollof, so I feel that I'm missing a key.
And then you can compare Ghanaian or Nigerian jollof.
Exactly. But I'm not such a huge fan of spicy food either, and I've heard the Nigerian jollof is very
spicy, more spicy than the Ghanaian one.
So I maybe have some prior or some bias, which makes me think that I might prefer the Ghanaian.
Doc, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for our chat. Thank you so much for the good work you do. Wonderful system, Baobab. Kudos to the team. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to iAfrikan Bytes. Please share your feedback with us on our socials. On Twitter @iAfrikan. On LinkedIn @iAfrikan.com. And check out our other podcasts, The Tefo Mohapi Show, Take Legal Matters, and The Lead Creative, on all podcast streaming platforms. And also make sure to head over to www.iafrikan.com. That is iafrikan.com/radio, and subscribe for notifications. iAfrikan Bytes is an iAfrikan media original show, produced by Nzalo Mbangana and content producer and host Madon Kotokwane.